And welcome back on Take Action News. This is Daniel Marins on Saturday, February 9th. Joining us right now on Take Action News is Tim Karr. He's the campaign director for Free Press, an organization that supports a free internet and a free media for all. And there was some news this week, Tim, that the government might be interested in creating something that a Washington Post reporter called super Wi-Fi. What was that idea, and is it real?
Well, it's a real idea, but the way that it was presented in the Washington Post was as if it was a foregone conclusion that the government, through the Federal Communications Commission, was actively setting up a nationwide free public Wi-Fi service. Which, you know, and the thing that was amazing about that story is that it really spread like wildfire through social media. A lot of tech blogs picked it up and put it out there, as you know, said coming soon, free Wi-Fi, and it's sort of like offering someone free beer. Like, everybody loves it, and you know, so it just generated so much excitement that it took about half a day to a full day before people realized that the Washington Post correspondent didn't get it quite right, in that what she was describing was a plan to make space on the public airwaves, on our spectrum, for unlicensed access, for unlicensed spectrum. And that's just a first step, a very small first step in getting us to something that would look like a free nationwide public Wi-Fi service.
Okay, so I want to dive in a little bit because you explained this very, very nicely in your piece on Huffington Post that I encourage everyone to read. You can look up Tim Karr on Huffington Post, Timkarr, and also follow Tim on Twitter at Tim Karr. There are these blank spaces in the sort of the spectrum that we use for television, for internet, what have you, and you wrote that sort of the licensed spaces are the ones that just go to sort of private companies.
That's right.
And the unlicensed spaces, or sort of dark spaces, is it, are theoretically open to public use for things like public Wi-Fi that people could have access for. But you've said that those blank spaces have become rare in recent years. Why is that? What about the Federal Communications Commission and their control over the spectrum has limited the amount that's open sort of for, let's say, nonprofit purposes?
Right. Well, there's a long history here, and you know, it would take me hours to retell it, so I'll try to do it as quickly as I can. But we used to allocate the public airwaves largely for television and radio broadcasting. That was when the FCC was set up in the 1920s and 30s. That was one of its prime purposes, was to like look at the spectrum, and they carved out a very large chunk for television and radio broadcasting. But over the decades, and over the last several decades, there's been this transition. A lot of television viewers are now watching it via cable. The internet has arisen. And of late, we've seen the wireless internet, where people have wireless devices that they're accessing the internet for. So the FCC recognized that it had to take that big chunk for radio and broadcasting, for television broadcasting, and reapportion it. They digitized TV broadcasting, and it freed up this big slice of the airwaves. And what the struggle right now is between how we repurpose that slice. Should it be sold as licensed? That means that a single entity, through an auction, can buy access to a slice of that spectrum, and they would be the sole entity that could use it. That's the model that your wireless service providers, your carriers like AT&T and Verizon use. They want to have sole access to the spectrum so that they can run their business over that and no one else can get on. The other option is to go unlicensed, which is to open up the spectrum so that anybody can use it. An unlicensed spectrum is like Wi-Fi. People who are familiar with Wi-Fi nodes, if they go to a Starbucks or things, it's just something that your device logs onto, and you could have a bunch of different devices logging onto it. It's much more open. And so there's this battle going on between the carriers and others who think that all that new spectrum, or the spectrum that we're getting from the broadcasters, should be licensed. And then people like Free Press, my organization, thinks that it should be more unlicensed so we could have this Wi-Fi model. Now there's one other element there, And that is that the Wi-Fi that we're looking at is not the kind of Wi-Fi that you're familiar with that you may have in your home, or you may have a coffee shop that only transmits some 40 to 50 feet. This is a lower frequency Wi-Fi that can go for several miles. So there are a lot of cities out there that are trying to create municipal broadband networks. They want to be able to provide another option other than your cable provider or your wireless provider for people to get online. And this is very sexy. People have used the term super Wi-Fi. They've used Wi-Fi on steroids. This would be really good for them because they can create these kind of clouds of connectivity that would go further than that 40 to 50 feet, that would cover several miles. So there's a struggle going on about how the FCC is going to repurpose that spectrum, and a lot of public interest advocates like my organization really want to see a larger piece of licensed available, so you can have the possibility of sometime an affordable public Wi-Fi system that covers a whole community.